go make an illegal amount of money, go make an absurd amount of money, go have the craziest party experiences, go have the craziest, live the most hedonistic lifestyle, and then you'll be like, okay, yeah, actually it make me happy.
My come up is harder. I bust up my drip. My diamonds is water. My come up is lit. MyComeUp.com.
How old were you when you first started the educational side for the course? How old were you when you initially started?
18.
18.
Yeah.
So at 18 years old, aside from what you was accumulating from your actual agency service, running ads, how much was an 18-year-old Iman seeing from?
The most I got to, so a lot of people talk in terms of revenue. In terms of most I got to in dollars, so around 150,000 pounds, $200,000 profit in a month.
Wow.
So yeah, when I was 18, I made my first million, not pounds, dollars profit. And yeah, it's just kind of built every year since. And
how did that feel?
Like, I don't know, it's one of those things, like it's, here's the thing. I think also reading all these books, I think I had such a unique perspective, and I'm so blessed to have had that perspective growing up, where I said I lived in this weird purgatory where my mom and I had no money, but I was going to private school, 25 grand a year private school, and some of my friends were literally billionaires, right? And then they would take me away on a holiday, and you just see how miserable these people are, right? Even one of my, you just see how miserable these people are, and they've got hundreds of millions, to their net worth, and I would see that, and I would see the sort of the emotional set point of their life, and then I come home to my mom, and it's the same thing. It's like looking at the same person when you strip, except one has hundreds of millions, one has nothing, and you're like, what's changed? What does that money do for you? Or even looking at my stepdad, like, super twisted character, and it's like, what has all that money done for you? You're probably one of the most unhappy people I've ever met. So I think having that knowledge going into it. Now here's the thing, money doesn't make you happy, right? I knew that, right? That's not a hard concept to understand, but also just fuck off to anyone who tries to tell that to someone when they haven't earned money. Until look, the truest truth in life is that money doesn't make you happy. Women don't make you happy. Sort of hedonistic, ego-based accomplishments, they don't make you happy. But also, go make an illegal amount of money, go make an absurd amount of money, go have the craziest party experiences, go have the craziest, live the most hedonistic lifestyle, and then you'll be like, okay, yeah, actually it make me happy, right? In 2018, I kind of started to experience some of that. 2018, I did the things that I always wanted to do. I bought my first Rolex, then, I bought one of my friends who was there for me when I had nothing. I bought him a Rolex for his birthday, and, I traveled the world. I flew business class and first class for the first time. And, I enjoyed all that. 2017 getting to the point, the biggest life changes from going from 0 to 15 grand a month, right? 10, 15 grand a month. That is by far the biggest life change I've ever had, right? Ever. I can tell you that did way more for my life than, I actually just came back from Cape Town, right? And I put on my story, I'm going to go make my next million in Cape Town. And people were like, how are you going to do that in 7 weeks? And, I calculated it in dollars. I did 1.25 million profit, right? As in my balance increased by 1.25 million. Around 500K of that was from the business. And then around, we were talking about off camera, around another 750K of that was from investments. And just, sitting cash heavy for a while and then seeing opportunity and striking. So, getting to the point, I was thinking about this on the plane. I was like, holy fuck, I just came back. I left 6 weeks ago. I came back with an extra 1.25 million to my name. I couldn't care less. My spending's not going to go up. My happiness set point is going to go up. The greatest thing that I got from the last 6 weeks was, I do this thing called monk mode. Right? And when I get in monk mode, it's no alcohol, no caffeine, no sugar, no carb, gluten. And I also do an hour a day of meditation. There's no point in my life, and obviously no partying, basically do no socializing. And, that's the happiest I've ever been. I'm in that there's no amount of money that can buy peace, inner peace. And, going into this year, 2018 I was able to fulfill some of those hedonistic desires. And then 2019, the first half of 2019, I was really in a Zen monk mode vibe. And the second half of 2019, I mean, like just, buying, getting tables twice a week. I was single for the first time in 2 years at that point. And, imagine getting to the point where you're making some months, a couple $100,000 a month, but you're in a relationship and then you get out of it and you're like, oh, holy shit, I can live like a rapper and a rock star, and then you do that and you're like, I don't actually care about it. Like this, none of this shit fulfills me. And then going into 2020 was really the year that I settled down. I even looked at things that I was doing, and I was like, there's certain places that I'll spend money because it genuinely makes me happy, and there's certain places I won't. So many people have expected me, for example, you have a beautiful Ferrari, right? And so many people have expected me to get a nice car. For me, my greatest happiness is, walking. I love walking, so I'll never have a car, and I looked at certain things I was doing in 2019, 2018, and I was like, you do that because you think someone who's making your amount of money should do it. And I looked at certain things. For example, one thing was flying business in first class. I was like, man, you actually don't care. Most of the time, I'm not a big sleeper on planes. I was like, man, like you're doing this because you think someone who makes this amount of money should be doing that, right? And I was like, most of the time, I do work on the plane, or I use the plane. I never watch Netflix. I use an opportunity to load up on some Netflix. All the shows people have been telling me about, or get through an entire book, right? So I made decisions in 2020, for example, to fly economy. Now I will never fly economy ever. With everything going on in the world, yeah. I mean, shit, like no chance in hell I'll ever fly economy again. But that was an example. Or for example, I looked at things like eating food, right? I'm sure this. You get to a certain point where you're like, if you're going somewhere, it's gonna be Zuma, it's gonna be Nobu, it's gonna be Mr. Whatever your favorite restaurants are, in that sort of price bracket. But that becomes normal to you. And I looked at it and I was like, honestly, like maybe this is just growing up in Russia where you have borscht and you have fucking soup and like potatoes and like chicken with bones. Like, I'm not a real connoisseur when it comes to food. For me, like I couldn't care less the difference between a 10-pound meal and a meal that, or if I'm going to the Iraqi and spending 800 pounds, So I think that's the most important thing. And then there's certain things that I do that people look at and they're like, I can't believe, you buy a Richard Mille and, wear 200,000 pounds on your wrist. Or, I have a watch collection that's worth, at this point, almost £1 million. And, people are like, that's dumb. And I'm like, look, it makes me happy. Like you can see right there, I've got watch books on all 4 floors of my house. I've got watch books. Horology is what I like, So I think that's the most important thing is just money doesn't make you happy, but go experience that for yourself. You get tricked enough times that you learn that's the case. Go make a ton of money, right? Go fulfill all of your hedonistic desires. Then look at your life and assess what is important to you, right? Because there are certain things that I have no budget on. There's certain things I have no budget on. There's certain things I've looked at and I'm like, man, that doesn't make you happy. So don't spend because you think that's what someone, with your life in your income bracket does. And as I said, your life really doesn't change that much. And the other thing is, it won't be like that for the first few years. For the first few years, you will keep looking at things and like, once I get that. And then you get to a point where like, even like this house, living in Knightsbridge, 4-floor house, man, like I went from my old place in Chelsea, a 2-bedroom flat, which I was in for almost I was in there for like 2.5 years, and I was like, I need something bigger, like I need more space. And man, I fucking hate this house. Like I don't need all this space. I have 4 floors. I never fucking use it. It's a bitch to maintain this, that. So, I'm actually looking to downscale my life, and, I'm moving into a place where, one of my biggest focuses for the rest of the year is just like removing clutter and just having, I went to this year and my theme for the year was peace, God, and gratitude. That's what I want more of in my life from this year. So I think, you really got to go through that journey to reach that conclusion.
Also, I think what's interesting to know, I mean, you've definitely been transparent with your journey on YouTube, and you've clearly set up your own agencies and been successful at it. But you're also very public, and you've used YouTube as a vehicle, which today in 2021, which today in 2021 is there are a lot of people that try to imitate emulate what you're doing, maybe creating their own courses or trying to demonstrate their lifestyle the same way you do, which then creates this society, which I think exists on YouTube, where you have this animosity of people, maybe dragging your name or being negative. How do you deal with all of that attention and also the negativity that can come with it? Of course, there's positive points like helping your students, but of course, as well as that, there are negative points that come with being, the face of your brands. How do you deal with that?
For sure. No, great question. I mean, here's the thing. I'd definitely say, once again, first few years, it definitely really affected me. You get comments, you get comments and this and that. And yeah, 100% first few years, it really affected me. But, this is also one of the big reasons that, on the personal brand side of things, I realized with the course thing is like, hey, like, you got to go from having even in 2018, it got to a point where I was making more money from my course profit than I was from my agency. And people had a real issue with that. And I was like, look, it's not, like there's not much I can do about it, right? People are loving the program, this, et cetera, et cetera. And that was one of the big reasons I changed from a course to a real education company to a point where, now at Great Agency, we have a team of 7. My staff cost a year is almost $600,000, right? Like my people get paid extremely, extremely well. And, we get to a point where basically by 2025, it's starting from next year, but I'm giving 50% of my profits to my team, right? That's because I want the best of the best in the world working on this new platform that we have and working on this education company. And that's why, I mentioned it a couple times. I've gone to a point where, my agency far out exceeds my education company in terms of what it brings in profit. Now, I will also openly say, like, that's because I run it like a dumb fuck, where, as I said, I'll spend 30 grand on a party just for some of you, my students, can have fun. I'll spend over 7 figures on a R&D costs when, look, no one ever asked for it. I just want to make the product something that can really stand the test of time. So in terms of my personal brand, I feel as though the other thing is, like, for years and years, like, people will push. I mean, the first thing is with my personal brand, it's like, you want to validate. I think people have a lot of issue with someone who comes in and is like, this is, comes straight in and they're like, I'm a successful agency owner, I'm a successful e-com owner, and this, and it's like, cool, but we only have your word to rely on. With me, it's like, as I said, people are so shocked that they can look back at 2015, they can look back at 2016, they can look back at 2017 when I'm in Genflow's office and I'm like, this is my new client, Genflow. When I'm in Zebrafuel's office, I'm like, this is my client, Zebra, where I'm literally like, they can see everything, right? They can see the entire journey validated. They can see when I'm 16 years old, and I'm like, it's so funny. Like, there's certain clips that just crack me up where I actually uploaded a Tristan, my creative director, uploaded a 1 hour and a half video of just all the clips on my YouTube, and you can see me in 2016, talking about, like, I was in the bus with my friend, and obviously the bus until you're 17, I believe, is free. So I was bus or walk everywhere. I think that's where my predisposition to walk comes from. It's just that it was free. I would talk about, like, there's a clip where I'm with my friend. I'm like, maybe one day we'll be able to Uber around, but for now it's just buses. Hey, and we're laughing about that. And I think that the fact that people have been able to see that entire journey really, really helps. And then, to this day, I just stick to a certain set of principles, and I feel as though people get to a point where they just see through the bullshit. I mean, first of all, with my agency, I think I've just always taken a radical transparency approach where people know the clients I've worked with, right? I share as much as I physically can without, disclosing sensitive client information. My team, on social media, people know Danny, people know Kieran, people know Luis, like, people know my employees, right? And, I basically just share as transparently as I can without ever sharing sensitive client information. I share my wins, I share my losses. And then just in terms of a company culture, I know at the education company, people feel very settled and at ease knowing that, hey, they take a large percentage of their profits and use that to build schools in underdeveloped countries. And no one ever asked me to do that. That's my own personal profit, right? It's not like we raise money. Like, that is my profits, my take home money that I decide, hey, rather than keeping this, I would rather use this to get to the point where now there's 1,500 children that get to go to school that didn't get to go to school, right? Pahar Trust, which is the organization we work with, they literally just sent me a photo yesterday of one of our because end to end, these projects take 12 to 18 months. So they just sent me the completion of our first project that I ever funded. And it's just like, I think there's certain principles that people can look through the bullshit. They can look at someone's core, and there's also it gets retested. I share things and I say things that no one else will fucking share and say. I'll stand up even if I look like the bad guy. Even with everything that's going on in the world right now, I'm very open and vocal, and I have put myself in the firing line to get canceled so many times, to speak out about tyranny, to speak out about how, as I said, I won't say it because then you'll get demonetized, but everything that's going on in the world is one of the greatest frauds in history ever. And as I said, no one else will talk about that because they need to keep making money from their personal. I don't fucking need anything. I got an investment portfolio worth over $4 million. I'm 21. I don't need to work ever again, right? I got an agency where we get the best results in the industry. We have a money back guarantee that if you don't do better, if you don't get better results than what you're currently doing, we don't take any money from you, right? We refund our service fee. So I've got my businesses where when it comes to my personal brand and my education company, I'll stand up for what's right. Right? I don't give a fuck if I get canceled. And I think what that does to someone's trust is they know this man will never lie to me, no matter how horrible he looks, no matter how much he's putting at risk of himself. He'll stand up for what's right. And I've lived by those principles, and I think it's worked okay so far.
And with all of this, obviously, you mentioned 2018. Mm-hmm. The way you coped with it wasn't that good, and I'm sure we know this is YouTube. It's the Wild Wild West. There's a level of attention that comes with being a public figure. How have you learned? Two questions. How have you learned to cope with it moving forward? And are there any risks that you've encountered with being such a public person through YouTube?
Yeah, I've had some crazy stuff happen, and that's why in this place we've got fucking, we've got ridiculous security, and I've even had to implement stuff in my life that I never would have thought I would have had to implement. I've got at my company, we've got a head of IP and cybersecurity. I never would have thought I would need that at the age of 20, but I've had crazy things like in my last place, people physically coming to my house, attacks from hacks and attacks from all different areas. But it's I will say, it's not really like I'm a massive figure, right? And even my audience, and people ask a lot like, why do you speak in dollars? That's just because I'm trying to cater to my audience. 80% of my audience and my customers are in the US or North America. So I think maybe it'd be different if I was living in LA. I don't have a huge audience I do have a good sized audience in Europe and London and stuff like that, but it's not what it is in the States. So I don't know. I will say, it's there's certain hotspots, and there's certain hotspots. For example, in Bali, at least once or twice a day I'll get stopped, or in LA actually quite a few times a day I'll get stopped. But I barely leave my house anyways. I've put in protocols for security, but also it's even things like sharing my investment portfolio. I'm super transparent about my investment portfolio, and people say you shouldn't. Once again, for me, it's just I've always taken a radical honesty, radical transparency approach, from everything from relationships to drug use to investment for everything. And I think at the end of the day, it's I've worked hard to get to a point where I can do it my way, and that's the only way that I want to do it.
So is it safe to say that you've also learned how to cope with the negativity that could come from YouTube, from people, from the risk? Have you learned how to be tunnel vision, or does it still sometimes flicker in your thoughts?
Yeah, look, I think the thing is, that, first of all, if someone comments, you're a dickhead or you're a dumbass, or it's those are very basic. The only thing that ever affects me is if I feel as though I didn't show up the best I could for my team, my clients, or my customers. And if someone has a genuine criticism of me for that, that hurts. But I need to hear that, right? To be a better leader, to be a better business owner, etc., etc. Now, if you look at even, for example, the quality of my programs, 2018, my first program, I can't even look at. Like, it's just, I've heard so many people have said so many good things about it. I'm like, I don't see it, And then that drove me to make my second iteration of my program the best in the market, full stop, hands down. There's no question anymore, So that's the other thing I'd say, the criticisms only hurt me if it's from the people who I care about, which, as I said, my team, my clients, my customers. Now, us getting bad results for clients in 2018 or 2017, that was the norm. In 2018, it's 50-50. We worked really hard to get to a point where your results speak for themselves. And as I said, anything outside of that, I've also put in, like the thing is, if a negative YouTube comment comes in, before I could ever see it, my team, will delete it. If I don't look at my Facebook ad, I don't look at the ads comments, my team, so I will say, as a business owner, you need to put a fence around yourself. It is very hard to get to me in a lot of senses, because my team does a lot of moderation. And also just the other thing is, like, I will say we just don't, outside of that, like, surface level, you're an idiot, blah, blah, like that sort of stuff. I don't really get much criticism, honestly, like, because it's just, once again, you just, like, how are you going to criticize someone who's documented everything they've done for 5 years, has consistently, I feel, consistently always done the right thing, even if it's the hard decision, and even if it's, they can get criticized for it. So yeah, I will say I actually just don't get much criticism these days.
What would you say the biggest misconception about Iman is?
That I'm a robot. I know a lot of people think that I'm, like, just a machine. And I will say there are times in my life where I'm a machine, especially when I'm in monk mode. I'm definitely just super locked in and dialed in. But I'm a human in every other way. Like, I've even had people, there was a point in 2020 where, like, at some point I was genuinely, like, thought I had fallen out of love with my businesses in general, right? And then, coming into 2020, I like, literally the past few months, I've never been more excited. And I've never had more passion for what I'm doing. So I'd say it's probably around the concept of, like, hey, he never has his down days. He never has, his own struggles. Because, everyone goes through them.
And looking back at the 16-year-old ambitious star-ride Iman, what advice, knowing what you know now, what would you tell him?
Knowing what I know now, what would I tell him? Honestly, I look back at everything thinking that everything happened exactly the way it should have. Let's see, if there was only one piece of advice that I give him, it's probably just like, just be patient. You know what I mean? And it's so cliche. But I think when you zoom out, sometimes it's so hard to, like, understand timelines. And even I have to remind myself at 21, like, I just turned 21, and I'm like, I'm like having these goals and trying to reach them as quick as possible. And it's just like, you have to remind yourself, you have to zoom out all the time. Like, and I know a lot of my friends do that with me. They compare themselves to me, and I'm like, look, you don't understand. Like, I had just, like, this weird like, for me, it was 50%. Yes, I put in a ton of hard work, but it's 50% luck and timing, right? So just don't compare us, because for me, if you're under the age of 25, I expect that you've done nothing with your life. The first 25 years of your life is honestly just to fuck around and just, make mistakes and see what works and what doesn't. And I think if you're below the age of 35, you're young, right? Which is very, like, I hope that doesn't come off as patronizing from a 21-year-old, but I think it's because of my obsession of timeline. Hey, I need to, for me, it was like, I want to make my first million at 18. And it's like, cool, you do it, but it's like, wow, like, what now? Right? That's so long. Like, I have 12 years until I reach 30. Like, what the fuck? And as I said, I think when you can zoom out, when you can zoom out and just understand the timeline, you'll just have a lot more inner peace.
So, last question, which I think is an important one. Who is Iman Gadzi?
That is a great question. Obviously, very esoteric, but I mean, like, if I had to basically list off a couple of traits or values that are important to me. For me, I've always thought of myself, and I always think about my progress not in terms of where the business is at or where I'm at in terms of health or this. It's always just been character, right? And that's why, funnily enough, a lot of my older friends are people that make way less money than me, but like you put me up against them, I look like a boy, based on character, right? I think you can just look at you can look at a man's eye and you just fucking know, like, they're just so grounded, and they're just so grounded and at peace. They've got a real inner peace. I think if you looked at me where I am in my life right now, I'm grounded, right? But I don't think you look at me and be like, that man is come into fruition in his manhood and as a leader, right? I think there's certain things I do in terms of my energy where I'm still a little frenetic. You think about, if you ever read the book, King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, I don't think I've come into, and by the way, don't take this literally, right? Don't think that I'm calling myself a king, but I don't think I've come into my kingship yet, right? Whereas I have friends who are 30, 35, 40. These guys aren't I also have friends who are 30, 35, 40 who are actual billionaires, right? I've got those friends, but I don't think they've come into their kingship yet. I don't look at them and I'm like, you are a grounded man, and like you have a real inner peace in your life, right? So it's got nothing to do with money or accolades or this or that. So I'd say where I am right now, it's funny, on my ayahuasca retreat, I was in ceremony, I was thinking about this. I was like, I don't know why this came to mind, this idea of like cub, young king. I think I'm come out of my cub phase. I'm in that young king phase, where you've figured 50% out, but that other 50% you still have a long way to go. And I think, over the space of the next 10 years, I'll get to a point where you look in my eyes and you're like, wow, this is a man who is grounded, who is really at inner peace. And that 10-year journey is way harder, for me to get to, I want to get to 25 million in assets minus any debt by the age of 25. And I think I might need to increase that goal. I think it's a little too conservative. If I think about my 10-year journey in terms of my character compared to my 10-year journey in terms of business, the character journey is going to be the harder one, not the business journey.
Well, man, I think you're on track to discovering exactly who you're supposed to be and who you're becoming. And I think it's very impressive what you've built, at such an early age, and the way in which you've conducted yourself in constantly investing in learning. So I want to thank you for giving us the time to share your story, which is, I know to you, very intimate. And just want to say, look, we're rooting for you, we're supporting you, and I'm sure the MYCOMEUP viewers are going to be all over you we're adding more people that are going to be following you on YouTube and everything you're doing online. So keep going, just keep going. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it, man.